Good morning. My name's Howard Brown Jr. I am interviewing for the position of city manager with the city of Palm Coast, and I'm responding to several questions. The first question is, how would I implement an effective economic development program and comport with the comprehensive plan in 2050 vision that our city council recently approved? So, response to that question is, first of all, economic development plans are vital to the successful long-term growth of the community in a number of ways: tax-based, social, cultural, you name it. And so they're important. They are also time sensitive, meaning that you can do an economic development plan for a year, 2, 3 year plans, but nothing long term like a comprehensive plan, which looks at a 10-year planning horizon, which may or may not be realized before an economic development plan can even take off. And so you have to be very careful you don't create an unintended consequence. So I've done both. I've as an urban planner and have been served as a planning director in 2 different states and 3 different jurisdictions. I have a unique perspective because I had not only the responsibility of carrying out the comprehensive plan or the vision of the commission or the people, but I also put together very specific, I call them precise plans, aimed at going through economic development. I currently do that as a consultant, a management consultant, working in and around the state, primarily South Florida and throughout Florida, as a economic development consultant as well. The other question was about leadership management. I have a very participatory management style that lends itself to the experiences I've had working as a city manager in 3 different states, or 4 different states actually, either as a permanent city manager or an interim city manager. And so I think I provide a very unique perspective in uh, how I manage. I manage differently depending on the environment that I'm in. So, um, and how would I lead an organization? I would lead it based on the vision that has been stated and try to implement that collective vision of the governing body. Palm Coast is experiencing rapid growth and places significant pressure on utility, stormwater, and transportation systems. At the same time, residents expect fiscal responsibility, efficient government. City manager, how would you prioritize infrastructure investments, balance the budget, and communicate these trade offs? Well, first of all, this is something that you do as a city manager. Most good city managers will look at the capital improvement plan and make sure that it's fiscally constrained to the budget, ensuring that you have the funds to pay for it, not just in one fiscal year, but in out years as well. And if you don't, you should look at alternative ways of financing those capital improvements, e.g., go out, get grant funding to do certain things, and or state appropriation requests through the state. These are other alternative mechanisms using CRA dollars to finance those capital improvements, recognizing that this is very important to the community's long-term growth and development. Communicating all this, obviously, not only just through written memoranda to the city commission, but also painting that picture for the staff to make sure they fully understand the vision and how they play a part in implementing that vision. Tell us about a time. Tell us about a time you faced a complex and high stakes decision, city manager or a senior leader. How did you evaluate options, engage stakeholders, ultimately decide on a course of action? Looking back, what would you repeat? What would you do differently? Well, there's been a number of things. I try to be very participatory in what I do. I work well with city councils and commissions and also staff. And so I spend more time listening to how I approach those things. Um, I can just really speak to high stakes issue in Bell, California. Bell, California is in Los Angeles County, largest county in the country. It's about 4 miles southeast of downtown Los Angeles, and it I came right after a national scandal where the city manager, the deputy city manager, and a number of their elected officials absconded with about $500 million worth of general obligation bond funding. Well, my job coming in was to help develop a strategic plan or an action plan that could help alleviate some of that concern. One of the main goals of the plan was to improve our image, not just in LA County, but the region, state, nationally. And so that was one of the goals that I felt we needed, which some of our commissioners did not. But what I did know was that if we were very transparent in how we did business and we incorporate technology that was not only just accessible to our staff but to the public, it would help improve our image, not just in the city limits but countywide, statewide, you name it. And it did just that. And so, looking back on that, years later, it was the right thing to do. I don't think I would have done anything differently. I probably would have spent more time talking directly with individual commissioners that were against the proposition, and so that's probably what I would have done better. And it was complex because at our city commission meetings, we'd have hundreds of people there. When there are problems within city government, you'll see a lot of people. You'll see the chambers packed. When there are no issues, then you won't see that packed. So that's one of the things that I would be proud to say. I reduced the number of people that actually came to the city commission meetings after incorporating some of those strategies. So when deciding a millage rate on the incoming fiscal year, what is the impact of the inflation rollback? Okay, so it's a good question, because what we do know is that the rollback rate is a calculation that the state requires. It is a indicator of or what we did the previous year. And so when decision makers are making a decision, it's good for them to know what the rate was for the previous year. However, when inflation enters into the picture, sometimes expenses exceed our revenue because contracts go up. They might have escalator clauses in the contracts. Salaries go up either because the unions require it and or the city commission wants it. And so we have to be very careful when we look at the rollback rate versus setting the millage rate. The millage rate should be set for the year. We should start at the zero base and start from there. But inflation can affect that because sometimes we're not looking at what the embedded provisions are in those contracts, which creep up on us if we don't look at what the contract will be in out years. Okay, when addressing problem with your staff's employees, do you check with the particular employee's manager or supervisor first before contacting the concerned employee? Well, first of all, as a city manager, a lot of this goes through HR. However, there are times where you have employees that will come directly to you. So I take that opportunity to really understand where the employee is coming from, the affected employee is coming from, and kind of see it through their shoes first before I engage their manager or their supervisor. But I get all sides, and then after that, I work with HR or whatever policy that's in place, and then we move forward after that. And so I would talk with the employee probably first, then I would speak with their supervisor and try to get an understanding of whatever the issue is. In formulating our budget, how do you intend on maintaining or improving our current level of services without increasing costs and raising taxes and fees? Okay, so obviously, I've worked in communities where this is an item every year. There's been no community I've worked in where we didn't have these challenges, and so I would say that when communication is important, certain things leading up to this is important. For example, the commission should be getting quarterly financial statements so they can see sort of how the spend is occurring, what the expenses are in a quarter. So that by the time we get to mid-year and we do our mid-year, we might have to do a mid-year budget adjustment, but at least this financial picture is being explained in real time, as real as we can, because financial statements can't do it monthly because we don't see the banks are not reconciled sometimes monthly. Sometimes there's lag, but what we can do is we can put guardrails up to ensure that we are all constantly explaining to the city commission and the public what we're doing in terms of that. And then obviously at mid-year, if we need to make budget adjustments, then obviously it won't be a shocker to the commission or to the public that we're recommending that. Number 8, what do you feel is the most unique challenge currently facing Palm Coast, and how do you plan on attacking it? both short and long term. I think the city of Palm Coast right now is looking at how do you achieve success in a climate where we have disagreement and in those areas of disagreement. Well, one of the things I learned when I was at the Harvard Executive Leadership Program was how to negotiate in very tough times with people that are very difficult to deal with, and 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 I know that even the difficult people that work at the city of Palm Coast or on the city commission, they mean well and they are looking out for the city. And so, as a city manager that has the experience to really navigate those areas, I'd work with everyone on the city commission, and I'd work with the employees. I would build like a power wheel of how I would go about reaching out those folks to either try to recommend things or reach compromise areas or consensus on areas. But at the end of the day, you have to follow the majority, and the majority might want you to go a different direction. That's the direction I would go if I was city manager. Leaders are faced with ethical dilemmas every day. Could you please describe a workplace ethical dilemma that you have expressed during describing the situation task? There, as a city manager, I like to build my own individual relationships with the commission members. It helps me understand where they're coming from, so I am able to communicate that to not just other commissioners, but the staff. And so, because there is value in everyone that's on a city commission, and there's value in everyone that's even on staff, even though some people might think they need to go. So I look for the good things. I like to upplay positivity, downplay negativity, and I think by looking at those things and using those as my cardinal principles, I think I know how to deal with ethical dilemmas head on. I would name a couple, but it would implicate other people, and I don't want to bring specifics into where. But I've had city commissioners try to get me to do things that were not ethical, and I did not do it because I knew at the end of the day it was my reputation on the line. A lot of it revolves around interference of elected officials. It creates a poor work environment when city officials or city council members interfere with day-to-day operations. It sends a bad message. It says a message that either the staff can't do their job or the city commissioners can do them better. And so I believe that neither is the case. I think we all need to be able to work together. Everyone has their role to play. And as a decision maker should follow the law of the community. And as a staff person, we should follow the direction of the city manager as well as the city commission, how that comes out. And so the interference has been a very big issue, not just in Palm Coast, but a number of communities across the country. And one of the things I've learned by talking or discussing these kind of items with other city managers, I've learned to understand how to navigate those issues, those ethical dilemmas when there is interference of city commissioners. In fact, if you go to an ICMA conference, which stands for the International City Manager Association, a lot of the breakout sessions revolve around council communication. And so that's been the biggest dilemma in most cities, trying to make sure that you have a harmonious working relationship with the commission, that you can agree to disagree without creating friction. At the end of the day, it's their community. When I say they, city commission's community. You're just a hired hand to try to help carry out their vision by creating mission, goals, and objectives. What matters do you consider the most important when conducting performance evaluations? Well, what metrics? I'm sorry, what metrics? What metrics? Well, I think they should be short. They should be goal oriented. There should be a goal setting meeting with the affected employee. There should be a plan of development. It should be agreed upon by both the employee and the supervisor. That it should be timely. That whatever we want the employee to do, we make sure that it is timely. That there's a time. It's time sensitive. That it is something that they can achieve within their ability. So you would not assign a task to an employee that couldn't do it. And so just making sure you're specific on what you're trying to carry out. and that is tied to business, the business of Palm Coast, not just something you personally want to see, that it lines up with the strategic goals of the city as a whole and city manager policies.